Support the show on Patreon and gain unique perks like an Armchair Historian coloring book, uniform guide, profile pictures, or wallpapers. Hi, I'm Griffin Johnson, the Armchair Historian. The image of the German Wehrmacht became synonymous with lightning warfare spearheaded by its vaunted Panzer Corps, but they were only a fraction of the German army throughout the war. In reality, ultimate success on the battlefield depended in large part on the effective performance of the ordinary foot soldier. Today, we will take a closer look at the development and conduct of the backbone of Hitler's army, the Wehrmacht's infantry squad. Commanders who aren't mindful of time risk missing opportunities that could win battles. But thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Holzkern, keeping track of time will never be an issue. The maker of unique, handcrafted timepieces and jewelry made from all natural materials since 2015, Holzkern's high-quality watches and accessories come in numerous and varied designs for both men and women, making them the perfect gift for any occasion or style. I was really impressed with the light blue marble dial and silver case of the Naturalist watch, which I'll likely be wearing from now on in my videos, and the walnut finish of the Askja watch, as well as the elegant earrings, bracelet, and watch made from light blue nacre, which made for a memorable gift for my wife. All pieces are guaranteed for 24 months and ordering online is super easy, with free shipping to the US and most EU countries within 2 to 5 days. Followers who use our special discount code ARMCHAIR15 at checkout will receive 15% off of all products and a free polishing cloth worth €15. Support our channel by clicking the link down below and choose your own personal piece of nature for everyday life with Holzkern. After the end of the Great War, the remains of the Kaiser's once proud army returned home demoralized and defeated. Victory had eluded the grasp of the Germans, yet the final year of the war had, at least initially, been marked by promising developments. During their spring offensive, newly formed stormtrooper units performed well. Armed with revolutionary tactics and the latest weaponry, these specialized units had almost single-handedly reintroduced movement to the static battlefield of the Western Front. The Reichswehr post-war studies, reviewing stormtrooper successes, hoped to create a new and even more formidable army, capable of overpowering the enemy before he would have a chance to respond in force. Based on the experiences of the previous war, Germany's foremost military minds concluded that the modern infantry squad ought to be designed to promote self-sufficiency, rapid movement, as well as deliver overwhelming firepower. The Prussian military tradition, which emphasized duty and honor in military service, was still a factor in German culture, but Nazi organizations such as the Hitler Youth and Reich Labor Service sought to fully remilitarize society by physically and mentally preparing the German folk for military service from a young age. Men entering service were instilled with an offensively minded spirit that favored aggression of movement and the attack, even while defending. The underlying idea was that the attacker retains the initiative on the battlefield and could decide when and where to fight on his own terms. The squad leaders, who were to direct these assaults, in turn were expected to be tough men who could act decisively under fire. They would be able to quickly recognize and seize opportune moments on the battlefield as they arose. Or, as the German tactical manual read, to be a leader in the field, a superior must display an exemplary bearing before his men in the moment of danger and be willing, if necessary, to die for them. This combination of superior leadership and training would make up for any potential deficiencies in manpower, which could lead to complete success against a numerically superior opponent. At the outbreak of the Second World War, German squads were composed of 10 men, consisting of a squad leader armed with a submachine gun, 6 riflemen armed with the Karabiner 98K, an ammo carrier, and a 2-man machine gun team equipped with the MG-34, and later on, the MG-42. In contrast to Allied infantry squads, which emphasized the role of the rifleman more, German squads were entirely centered around their machine gun. To accommodate this, machine gun teams no longer formed a separate section within an infantry unit, but were fully integrated within the squad hierarchy. Both of Germany's general-purpose machine guns, the MG-34 and especially the later MG-42, sported remarkably high rates of fire, far outclassing any of their Allied counterparts. They were seen as exemplary tools to completely devastate an enemy force and produce the kind of offensively minded spirit that the German commanders aimed to foster. When given orders to attack, a platoon would split up into 4 squads, while closing in on the objective. The machine gun team would lead the advance, while additional machine guns in the rear provided fire support. Achieving fire superiority was of the utmost importance, so if the advancing squads came under fire, the lead machine gun team would deploy to augment the covering fire from the rear. The riflemen, however, were to keep pushing forward as quickly and for as long as possible, rather than to help achieve fire superiority. Fire and maneuver tactics, which would often see several squads covering each other, would see large formations leapfrog on enemy-held territory. Once the squad reached a threshold of around 100 meters from the enemy positions, the squad leader would determine the place of penetration in the enemy line, and order his men to focus fire. If possible, several squads would attack simultaneously in this way from various directions to further overwhelm the opponent and spread out their defensive fire. Once suppressed, the squad leader and the rifleman would assault the penetration point with grenades and bayonets to overcome the remaining enemy strongpoints. Similarly, whenever a squad found themselves on the defensive, the men would form up around their machine gun team, which would optimally have several secluded spots from which to fire on an advancing enemy. The MG-34 and MG-42's high rates of fire were perfectly suited to suppress and bludgeon an enemy assault, while the rest of the squad would focus their fire on any targets that had managed to evade the hail of bullets. Should the enemy manage to survive this onslaught, the Wehrmacht's training dictated that a squad launch a head-on counterattack to rout any remaining opponents. These tactics would prove highly successful in the early years of the war, and due to only having incurred limited casualties, many squads could benefit from presence of veteran NCOs and officers of previous campaigns. But casualties would rise in a dramatic fashion as the fighting dragged on, and soon the Wehrmacht would disband entire units and settle for squads at times made up of only 5 or 6 men. By 1944, the German army could only afford to maintain some full-strength veteran units, while most infantry squads in the West were made up of inexperienced and undertrained soldiers, as well as foreign fighters with a limited understanding of the German language. However, these otherwise debilitating obstacles did not equate to a devastating loss of military effectiveness. In fact, most German infantry continued to be combat effective right up until the end of the war. Moreover, the introduction of the STG-44, the world's first assault rifle, somewhat compensated for the loss in manpower, while the mass-produced and easy-to-use Panzerfaust greatly augmented German anti-tank capabilities. However, none of these developments proved sufficient to turn the tide of the war, and soon, the Wehrmacht's offensive spirit was flipped into a desperate defense as the Allies closed in on the German homeland. At the start of the Second World War, the Wehrmacht had managed to rebuild the German army to its former glory. Its new infantry squads were modeled after tried and tested ideas from the previous war, and equipped with some of the most powerful machine guns in existence. This proved to be a highly successful combination in the early years of the war, in which German military prowess outclassed its enemies on various fronts. However, As time dragged on and casualties rose, the Wehrmacht was forced to downgrade its units and find increasingly desperate ways to retain combat effectiveness, while the far more numerous Allies continued to replenish and augment its men with the latest weapons and equipment.